As Russian forces close in on the capital city of Kyiv, what does this mean for the rest of Ukraine? Let's map it out. All right, so we have a map here. This shows kind of the fighting that's happened so far. What we see here is that most of the fighting is in the east, is in places where we knew Russia would be or coming in from. The main thing happening right now is the city of Kyiv still belongs to Ukrainians. And so with that, we're going to bring in an expert panel of military generals. Let's bring in our military leaders, General David Perkins, retired commander of the Army Training and Doctrine Command, retired General Keith Kellogg, Fox News contributor, and former National Security Advisor to Vice President Pence, and retired Brigadier General Don Bolduc, U.S. Senate candidate and Army veteran who served 10 tours in Afghanistan. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining this morning. And let's just kind of talk about what are the obstacles and challenges in front of the Ukrainian army now, or the entire country of Ukraine, as we talk about urban warfare and civilians picking up arms. I want to say that the first challenge is logistics. And General Kellogg, I'll go to you first on this. Do you see a way for us to actually send weapons and munitions and just logistics in general into the country to support this?
Yeah, I do. And thanks for having me, Jory. Look, I think President Putin has tremendously underestimated Zelensky and the Ukrainian forces that are now fighting. There's a Shakespearean quote, "Cry havoc and let loose the dogs of war," and I think he forgot how to fight. He should have come at him in a massive way. He didn't, which is great for the Ukrainians. I think the Ukrainians are fighting back hard, and there's incredible, great leadership by Zelensky. His comment this morning, "I don't need a riot, I need ammunition." That's great, and it shows his tremendous leadership, and it's inspiring the Ukrainian nation. Here's how the United States can help out. This is where the president calls in as director of the CIA and issues a presidential finding. And he says, look, you need to help out with paramilitary into Ukraine and help with ammunition, and he can do it. It'll be covert, or clandestine, but that's a way to help them out. They are showing that they deserve our support and our help. It's thrown Putin off balance. The longer this goes, it's the worse for Putin. And if he cannot pull this off, then I think he'd better increase his bodyguards, because I think they're going to realize it's a pariah as a leader and he's a pariah as a nation, and he can't stand that. I think that's the reason why we're hearing this morning of more BTGs. Those are battalion tactical groups. Each one around 800 people are coming in out of Belarus. That's his exploitation force, I think, that he intended to use later in the fight, and he has to use it to subdue Kyiv, and I don't think he can do it. I think it's reaching a point now where you look at those people fighting on the streets, and David will tell you this too from being in when he was in Baghdad. I'm telling you, armies don't like street fighting in cities. It absorbs units, and it's hard to do.
General Perkins, I'll go to you on this. We've shown graphics here on Fox that kind of show a list of the amount of soldiers for one country and the other, the amount of tanks, the amount of planes. When you talk about training and doctrine, when you talk about how we're going to fight a war with your expertise, it's not really a one-for-one when we're talking about Ukrainians having the home field advantage and urban warfare. These, what we, I guess, would consider waking up this morning and seeing a win as far as Ukraine holding on to its capital city. Is that a one-for-one win, or is this more dependent on how Russia is currently fighting and what they could eventually do?
Well, that's a great point. And to build upon what Keith said, having had the honor of commanding a large armored force like the Russians have, going into a capital to effect regime change, the two most important things are, as you asked before, logistics and timing. You have to do it quickly, because historically the advantage always accrues to the defender. Historically, we say a defender has a 3-to-1, maybe a 6-to-1 advantage just by being the defender over the attacker. The second thing is, we talk about logistics. It's not just supplying the Ukrainians with logistics, but it's cutting off the Russian logistics. This is a very large armored force, very dependent upon fuel and ammunition. And if the Russians don't make their timelines, that means they can't establish what we call the lines of communication, which means they can't establish their logistical capability, which then it starts to compound itself and you start to grind to a halt. So when I'm looking at what's been reported with regards to casualties the Russians have lost, both in personnel and in armored vehicles, it does not look good for them. This is not occurring as quickly as they planned, and every hour it slows down, the advantage accrues to the Ukrainians.
General Bolduc, you're running for Senate here in the United States. You've seen how our government has responded. What would you do differently, or what would be your advice to our president right now, someone who's commanded troops 10 times in Afghanistan, as far as what we should be doing or how we should be handling this today? Not just what we should have changed, but how we should be handling it today.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I think both generals set the table really well on what the Russians are doing and the Ukrainians. But my biggest concern right now is the resistance and the resistance phase that we're going to have to go into. The Ukrainian people will resist the Russian occupation. They will not allow Russian rule or civil order. They will bring NATO into the conflict. This will bring NATO into the conflict directly, because we're going to need to support it. And then so we need to be aware that the logistics, lethal aid, and potentially sanctuary support in NATO countries is going to be something that's going to bring us into the conflict. And it may give Putin a justification to attack NATO countries, because he feels that this is supporting the Ukrainians in a way that is a direct threat to him. So I believe this is inevitable, and I don't know what we're doing. I think General Kellogg said, yes, presidential finding with the CIA. We also have our special operation forces. And this is the advice that I would be giving the president right now. We see what Putin's doing. We see that the Ukrainians have the resolve. We need to invest in that. But when we do, we have to have the resolve and the will to follow through with it, because Putin will react.
Gentlemen, as general officers in the military, your service to our country is a debt we can't repay. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your analysis. And let's hope this resolves quickly.